Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honoring Excellence. I'm Gretchen Ritter, the Executive Dean and Vice Provost of the College of Arts and Sciences. And as you've just heard, our college is Ohio State's academic hub and its laboratory for discovery and creativity. We're home to 38 academic departments and schools. We have more than 20 centers and institutes and more than 80 major programs. With over 200,000 alumni, it's never easy to choose only a handful of outstanding arts and sciences Buckeyes to recognize each year, which speaks to the caliber and impact of our 2021 award recipients. Today, I have the great pleasure to present our two Alumni Award honorees, Michael Jaung and Pam Tanowitz. And while I wish we were together with all of you, I'm glad that we have a wider reach than usual, with alumni and friends everywhere who were invited to attend this event. So first, I'd like to welcome our Young Alumni Achievement honoree, Michael Jaung. The Young Alumni Achievement Award recognizes an alum who is 35 years old or younger and who has demonstrated distinctive achievement in a career or civic involvement. Michael is an assistant professor at the Henry Taub Department of Emergency Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine, where he works to improve emergency medical care in the United States as well as abroad. During his time at Ohio State, Michael majored in microbiology and international studies. He attended Harvard Medical School, did his training at the Baylor College of Medicine, and completed a master's degree in global health policy at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Focusing on global emergency care in post-conflict and post-disaster settings, Michael has worked with organizations such as Doctors Without Borders in Sierra Leone. He currently works on medical education and research projects in Houston, Belize, and Liberia, and has presented around the world on topics including emergency and critical care, point-of-care ultrasound, and humanitarian relief. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Michael has been a frontline doctor and helped to manage projects around the world. Michael, it's great to see you again.
Thank you, Dean Ritter.
And I'm, thrilled to have a chance to have this conversation with you today. I understand that you are joining us from Peru, where you're on assignment on a COVID project.
Yes, exactly. I've been now here in Peru in the Lima region for 2 months with a COVID emergency response project with Doctors Without Borders. MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, is the international name, so I'll use the acronym MSF. But I've been here helping take care of patients and working on a project where we're trying to address the COVID pandemic at different levels of the health system, from home visits of patients that have tested positive to providing a new isolation and treatment center to help with the capacity of local hospitals, and also to provide technical support and resources to patients that need intermediate and critical care in the regional hospitals here.
Well, let me begin by saying thank you for the amazing work that you're doing while you're in Peru, and earlier I understand that you were in Brazil as well. And it also occurred to me, and we were chatting for a few minutes just before we got on, that with your educational background, you are in many ways the perfect person to talk to and think with about what we should be learning from this moment, about what the pandemic teaches us about health, about globalization. I wonder what your reflections are on that.
I would say I've been learning along with everybody else in the world, both about the disease itself and how it affects really our day-to-day lives and the functioning of communities, of countries, regions in the world. For me, the pandemic started, I was going on my second assignment to Sierra Leone in February of last year. And so there had already at that point been declarations, there had been news reports, and then the first wave in New York happened while I was abroad in Sierra Leone. And for me to be working on a project while there is this new crisis in my home country, it was quite a different, it's kind of an out-of-body experience in some ways. So just like everybody, who are not working in medicine, everyone who was learning about this new disease in the media, in some ways I was right along with them reading about these firsthand accounts from physicians and nurses working in New York. And to this day, one year and 3 months later, we are still here. We're still working, we're still learning. Just as you mentioned, sort of having that breadth of experience or breadth of exposure to different fields really, I think, reinforces how health and these pandemics aren't just a medical issue. Really, it's about how society functions, it's how public health systems work, it's how governments are accountable, how there's exchange of people, information, and resources across borders and across regions, and how we can work better to be better prepared for a pandemic like this, to respond better, and to hopefully prevent a pandemic in the future. Thanks.
You were commenting earlier that the pandemic has revealed as a global community that some things are traveling very quickly, and it reveals kind of the promise and possibilities of being part of a global community. When you think about something like how quickly these vaccines were developed. And on the other hand, it reveals that some things are not traveling quickly, and some of the challenges and the inequities in our global community. Can you flesh that out for us a little bit?
Sure. I think right now what's traveling the fastest is information and disinformation. So just thinking back, I remember still the very first publications out of Wuhan, out of the first few case studies and case series of patients with this unidentified pneumonia, and how even after 6 months, we were really using that information to define what the cases were, to define our initial approach to taking care of patients, and to implement public health measures to prevent the spread of the disease. And so I think, we had that kind of explosion of initial information and attention. And of course, the science, what's wonderful about science is that it changes based on the evidence. It sort of everything can, the best recommendations can be changed if more, as we learn more effective ways to act. And so what I've seen is that it's been a little bit slower for these updates to go through or to be disseminated, to be adhered to. I think it's partially human nature. We learn a way to do things, whether it's wearing masks or not wearing masks, or keeping social distance or not keeping social distance. And it is often very hard to change people's behavior, especially when it's within the context of people needing to continue with their livelihoods, needing to provide for themselves and their families and their communities. And I think it's one way that highlights that, the pandemic is not just a medical issue. It really affects everybody's day-to-day life. And unless we address how it affects everybody's day-to-day life, we can't really control the pandemic.
Yeah. So I'd also love to hear your reflections on how you got here. What drove you in the first place to have this interest in practicing medicine in post-conflict and post-disaster settings?
For me, working in humanitarian relief as a physician is really the intersection of both medicine, public health, and human rights. And I remember, actually, it was really a study abroad experience I had while I was at Ohio State between my second and third year, my sophomore and junior years. It was a program for 3 months in the Dominican Republic. It was focused on health, nutrition, and environmental issues in a rural community in about 2 hours north of Santo Domingo. And to really learn about how, medicine is not just patients going to doctors and getting care with doctors and nurses. It really is affected by what their livelihoods are, what their resources are, their social economic status, their access to health systems, and how they navigate health systems as people. And for me, I really carried that forward through my continuing my education at Ohio State, and then as I went through medical school and training as a physician. And so I think for me, that was really a seminal, formative experience in trying to create a framework of how I look at my role in the health system as a physician or as someone who manages projects, but also always to remember what the perspective is like from a patient or a beneficiary. What is their experience and how can we best meet their needs?
Yeah, no, those are great reflections, and among other things, it does speak to the power of those kinds of immersive experiences, like study abroad experiences. So my last question for you in this part of the conversation is to kind of imagine back to your teenage self in high school, and what kind of advice would you give to a current, say, high school senior who's thinking about an arts and sciences education and perhaps interested in making a difference in global issues?
I think for me, the biggest skills to work are communication and observation. Whether that's communication through learning languages, communication through working on written skills or speaking skills, to be able to ask inquisitive questions without, and being aware of your own perspective, to ask appropriate questions that are really culturally appropriate, context appropriate, and to really stimulate discussions to find out sort of what people's perspectives are, what people's challenges are, communities' challenges, and what is actually a way to work together to find solutions. One of my mentors in medical school told me, the MD for a medical degree is not just medical doctor, it's actually helping patients make decisions. And so to think about it, not just from your own perspective as the treating physician, but what is the perspective of the patient and how can we help him or her make decisions to help benefit their health?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm hearing is about the importance of being an empathetic listener and someone with cultural competence. So that's great advice. So thank you, Michael. Your work really is inspiring, and we really appreciate all that you're doing for others. We are so fortunate to have you as a stellar example to our students about what's possible with an arts and sciences education. And thank you for serving as an ambassador for the college as well.
Thank you very much for this honor.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's well deserved. And now I'd like to ask Pam Tanowitz to join me. Pam is one of our 3 distinguished alumni achievement honorees. And this is an award that recognizes the outstanding career achievements and contributions of our alumni in fields such as the arts, business, research, academics, and public service. Pam is a critically acclaimed New York-based choreographer and founder of the Pam Tanowitz Dance Company. As an undergraduate at Ohio State, she studied in our Department of Dance, and she also holds an MFA from Sarah Lawrence. The New York Times in 2017 called her dance New Work for Goldberg Variations a rare achievement, and her 2018 creation, 4 Quartets, the greatest creation of dance theater so far this century. Wow. Pam was named a 2020 Doris Duke Artist and is currently the first ever choreographer in residence at the Fisher Center at Bard in Annenberg-on-Hudson, New York. Other honors include a 2019 Herb Albert Award, a 2017 Cage Cunningham Fellowship, a 2010 Foundation for Contemporary Arts Award, a 2011 Guggenheim Fellowship, and a New York City Center Choreography Fellowship. She has created for New York City Ballet, the Martha Graham Dance Company, the Royal Ballet, Juilliard Dance, and many others. Pam, it's just such a shame that you couldn't have tried to achieve at a higher level.
Well,
Welcome. It's really lovely to have you here today.
Thank you. I also just want to thank Michael. I loved hearing him talk and thank him for all his work he's doing. My dad was an infectious disease doctor. I know how dedicated and committed you have to be. So thank you for that, Michael.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So Pam, this has been, of course, an incredible year for all of us. And one of the things that we were reflecting on just before we got on is that it has both been a year that has been so deeply challenging for people in the performing arts. And at the same time, it's been a year that I think has reminded us of the deep importance of the arts. I wonder if you could share with us what it's been like for you and your dance company over this past year.
I mean, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm actually getting teared up because, in the beginning of the pandemic, we were all paralyzed. We actually didn't know what even was happening. I had all these shows booked. I had, cancellations at Lincoln Center, at the Barbican, at Kennedy Center, it just was a whirlwind. But the thing that was really struck me was my dancers and how am I going to take care of them? How are they going to survive? And, I just was paralyzed. And then I started making stuff on Zoom. And I, had these rehearsals with my dancers, and I tricked myself into thinking it was for them, but it was also obviously for me. And, I would make these rehearsals with my dancers. I didn't know what I was making anything for either. I had nothing to do, but I was making things to do. And I thought, okay, let's start this. And, the first 20 minutes of our rehearsal on Zoom would be just an emotional check-in. So it was really like dance therapy.
Yeah.
And so that's how we started. And then, we just did, then, people were wanting to, put things online, and I just wasn't ready to just do that. And I'm happy that people did that. Like, it's not a criticism or a judgment. Some people rallied and did things. I didn't really know what I wanted to put out in the world yet. So, and then I was in New York, and New York was, it was so hard to be in New York. It was scary. New York City was broken. And I almost felt like, forget about dance. What about New York City? Like what's going to happen? But it all relates, so. And then I just built up from there, and, and then things, then we started rehearsing in the park, and then I started making a film, and I was learning, and I was just curious and trying to answer questions. How am I going to do this? I reached, and I think one of your questions, I think, may have been, or I'm telling you what your question is. You asked that question. Go ahead.
No, it's interesting, the reflection on kind of why we're doing it. So one of the things that we did here this past year is we pitched tents. And we pitched tents for our performing arts, in part because we had to, right? Because there were lots of things we didn't feel like we could do safely inside. But there was something else too, in a moment where it felt like so much was being taken away.
Yeah.
We wanted something that was new, that was joyous. And in particular, one of the tents we pitched was a tent that was being used by the dance department, and it was right on the South Oval. Mm-hmm. And it was in a spot just across from the Student Union that had all this foot traffic. And again, people were stopping to watch the practices going on in the tent, and it opened up something.
Something else.
Right.
Right, people that weren't exposed to seeing dance, you know, so we were, same thing, we rehearsed in, you know, in the park, we had tons of people watching. The other thing that has really, because there's no live performances, there's been a lot of Zoom talk back. So all of a sudden I'm talking all the time, you know, when I think it's more interesting to see my dances, but now we're doing open rehearsals on Zoom and we're doing things outside, and you're getting to hear about the artist process more, and people are interested. People want to know how you make things. People, so yeah, so those people walking by the Oval who's maybe never even seen dance before now are being exposed to dance right in front of them. They might not walk over to see a show, but now they might, because maybe their interest is piqued. You know, so I think, you know, it's a new dialogue to have. It's a new way of bringing, you know, it's sort of like evening it all out almost, or like everyone's starting from the, you know, the same level and we're building up again. And that's sort of what I feel like about the arts going forward. Like, what have we learned? How are we going to bring this forward? We talked about that before we got on too. And I think one of the things I feel like collaborating on all these films, I made a couple films. I have one on coming on All Arts, an arts website, and some other things coming. And it's about collaboration. It's not about me and my choreography. It's about me and the dancers and the filmmaker and the composer. And it's, I think, long gone are the days where you're saying this is my idea. It's about really collaborating and really creating a model and I'm very interested in that going forward. I think that creating a model like that is what is the future for art. It's all about collaboration and also not taking things for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
Including, of course, the importance and the value of human connection. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why the arts, I mean, when you think about why it's so important to keep the arts alive, that's it. If you want to like sum it up, it's about connection. It's about dialogue. It's about, you know, a non verbal communication. It's about feeling. It's about being with people in the same space. You know, it's, yeah.
So what comes next, do you think, as we prepare to kind of slowly emerge, as Broadway's about to reopen, among other things?
Yeah.
What will the role of the arts be going forward in this space?
Well, I also am curious. I mean, I think, well, from the thing that's hard is you're saying, okay, like Broadway, you know, these shows are going to happen. Well, you don't just get a show. You actually have to rehearse. And that's part of the problem, is that you can't, like, say you're allowed to have a show in, you know, a month, but there's no show ready. You have to rehearse. You have to, like, there's so much that goes into putting up a project, you know, so that's also part of the problem, is that you need the time with the people in the studio making the thing, right? So that's one thing. But I think going forward, I think you have to make art that's flexible. That's what I'm interested in, something elegant and flexible that can go with whatever's going to happen. So we know, like, I have a show, an outdoor show that's booked, you know, this summer up at Bard. Now I'm doing it outside and it's a limited audience, but, you know, maybe that show could go inside, maybe it can stay outside, maybe it's for 4 dancers, maybe it's for 8 dancers, like it can be. And so I think that is also the future of what has to happen, is that it has to be flexible. It has to, you know, bigger imagination, film components. How are we going to carry over those presentations, having it integral into the work, or is it separate? Is it a companion film? So if you have a limited audience, you also can have a film that, you know, more people can see. So you're definitely, like, I feel like thinking broader.
Yeah. So among the things I'm hearing from you is flexibility, collaboration, and appreciation. Those feel like such great messages for all of us in whatever area, right, as we go forward.
Yes.
So let me ask you to reflect back for a minute, and share with us your thoughts on how OSU in particular helped to prepare you for this amazing, successful, creative career you've had as a choreographer.
Well, first of all, I'm much older than Michael, so I have to like go far back. But so I will say that I choreographed my first dance at Ohio State, and it was to a collaged sound score that had me and my friends from Ohio State talking about football games, how we didn't like to go to football games. Sorry, because we were artists and we were in the dance department, you know, that kind of vibe. And we were, so it was like this conversation between me and I remember my friend Brenda, and about how we only like to drink coffee and we are not going to football games. And then I had Janis Joplin playing, and I really experimented with, we all like hung over the stage and we like rolled. And I thought I was, you know, I feel like Ohio State let me learn rules, and also I was able to break them. Like, it was very structured dance department. But I'm really thankful for that. But I just want to get back to the piece, because just to show you how old I am, the reason why I'm telling you this is the collage was made on a reel-to-reel.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it was played on a reel-to-reel. I still have it. It says Ohio State University, and it's amazing. Anyway, so, but I think really, I had amazing teachers. I had
Can I share for a minute, by the way, the first time we met, which was what, about a year and a half ago, you started talking to me about one of those teachers and how important she has been in your life. And I'm pretty sure she's listening in right now.
Susan Hadley, was it Susan Hadley?
Yes.
I had amazing teachers at Ohio State. They were tough. Susan Hadley was tough, but one of my most memorable experiences was learning a Mark Morris piece from her, that I learned more about choreography in that piece than I had learned in a choreography class. It was a very special, it meant a lot to me. Also, Vicki Blaine was an unbelievable teacher, Vicki Uris, John Giffen. I had like incredible teachers that were really supportive, but tough in the best sense of the word. They expected a lot. But I had such a, I got every aspect of dance. Dance history is so important to me, and it started at Ohio State, because when I make my work, I really think about where I fit into the history of dance. And I think that love, well, I know that love really started at Ohio State.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, I had the teachers were wonderful. I really got a great experience there. Susan Van Pelt. Yeah.
So as you may know as well, we're in the middle of building out the arts district here. So we have 2 new buildings coming online, the Timashev Family Music Building, and then a building for our theater, film, media arts department. And when they're done, all of our performing arts programs, all of our arts departments will be co-located. It's amazing. You know, so the possibilities for things like collaboration and discovery will be enhanced. And it's being done in a way that's really intended to kind of open up the arts for the rest of campus as well.
That's great.
From where you sit, why is it important at this moment to see an institution like Ohio State making that kind of commitment and investment in the arts?
Yeah, I mean, it's saying this is important. Again, this is, you know, and I think that by housing all the arts together, and pushing forward this idea of collaboration between the arts is really important. I think, you know, at a time where, like, I think when I went to school, it was very separated. And everyone was on their own track. And I think it's just it's a freshness. It's what's happening now. And I think, you know, when I was there, also to show how old I am, they were building the Wexner Center to talk, you know, and so by my senior year, it was done. And that was a huge, you know, important, you know, museum that, you know, brought artists from all over the world to perform. And so this sounds like, you know, it's an sort of adding to that,
Right.
Just the landscape of, you know, of arts, you know, coming together, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And as was the case with Michael, I am sure I could continue to talk to you for the next few hours, but I do want to kind of transition us to a conversation with all three of us. And I will say, you know, I so look forward to a chance to come back to New York at some point and see one of your performances in person. That would be such a thrill for me, and I really hope we'll get you back on campus as well.
Yeah.
So Michael, do you want to rejoin us for a minute? So you've studied, of course, such different things, but within the same college. And I think one of my questions for you is to ask you to reflect a little bit with us about the value of that breadth, of that liberal arts and sciences education, of being at a place where you could combine international relations with the study of microbiology, or being at a place that wasn't a conservancy, but gave you that kind of broader arts and sciences grounding. Why was that valuable?
Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay, well, I think that it just makes you, you have something to make your art about. When you're learning, when you're meeting other people that aren't in your department, when you're taking other classes and being exposed to other classes that you have to take, it makes you a better person, more aware person, and, you know, yeah. And I really do appreciate the fact that I didn't go to a conservatory. And it doesn't mean that it's less. Ohio State, there was a lot of classes I had to take. Like, it was not easy. It was, you know, and it's more in some ways, and pushing your mind and your brain in different ways. But I know it informed me. So.
Great. Michael?
For me, it's all about context. So, you know, as someone who is working in different settings, working in different countries, always to have that breadth of understanding, or to know where to ask the first question. So whether that's approaching a new hospital director in a region where I haven't worked before, in a language that I'm not familiar with a new team. So sort of, it's not just the medical skills again, it's really having that background of being able to ask, okay, what is the historical context in this city? What is the influence of different social groups? And what is the political system like, both the general government, but also within the health system? Of course, there's always politics. So for me to have a framework to approach these new scenarios and these contexts, and to try to build new relationships with potential work partners and organizations and communities.
Yeah, it's striking to me you're both speaking to this breadth of something that is enriching you as a person, something that's allowing you to be thoughtful about the questions you're asking, and to pay attention in deeper ways the people around you and the context around you. That I think is a great takeaway in thinking about that. So I wanted to ask you as well to talk a little bit about, do you reflect on Ohio State to friends, family members, colleagues? Are there things that you're particularly proud of, things that you are eager to share with others?
I'll go first for this one. For me, my time at Ohio State was really quite an ocean of possibility. I switched majors probably 3, 4, 5 times to the chagrin of my parents. But for me, it was about finding my way, finding different opportunities to help me find my way. And in the end, it was sort of an accumulation of all those experiences, whether that was working in both a cancer research lab or a public health lab, and working in the undergraduate research office to help connect students with other research opportunities. For me, all of those experiences really sort of made me a better prepared citizen, to whether it was a doctor or a person or working in an organization, to have those skills of sort of knocking on people's doors, opening meetings, opening conversations. For me, I think, Ohio State is one of these special places where it really is quite a large playing field, to try to find your way and to learn. Thanks.
Yeah, the skills that come again from some of those immersive experiences that we talked about, and undergraduate research being one of them. And I think that teaches people so much, and it's not just about the science, but it's about themselves. Pam?
I think, well, like I told you before, I sort of fell into Ohio State. My mother, who I think is watching, was the one who found Ohio State for me. And she said, I heard this was a great dance department. So I sort of let it happen to me, but I think the thing that I really take with me is my exposure to so many different styles and techniques and ideas and concepts of dance. I think that I had such an eclectic training that it did prepare me for everything in a way. When I'm a teacher now, I teach at Rutgers. And so when I think back on my teachers, I think it's really, it's a big deal to be someone's teacher, and I take it seriously. And because of how much I loved my teachers. And in dance, like that's all, like a lot of it is that's all you have, because so much of it is intangible, and dance is really about the oral history, like the stories and the ideas that you get from your teachers mean so much, and then you pass those on. But you never really knew what, they tried to keep their, how do I say it? Like their personal preference out of it. So we were so exposed to everything where we were able to come to our own conclusions about what kind of dance we wanted to make. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about trying to please them or anything. It was more about like cultivating our own ideas. And I think that was really special. And, I was just exposed to so many different styles that I think it shows up in my choreography. I use all kinds of, there's no hierarchy of movement in my work. And that's really important. And that's probably where I got it from.
Yeah, those commitments, of course, continue, as I'm sure in the dance department now, of that commitment to rigor, that commitment to history, that commitment to exposing students to a range of genres and traditions, and then a kind of open invitation for people to find their own path and their own way. I hear both of you sort of talking about this as a place that nurtured you in finding your path.
Yes, I agree.
Which is great, which is what you want. So, I've only been at Ohio State now for less than 2 years. And one of the things I've certainly been struck by is Buckeye Nation and this incredible sense of connection and community that our alums have, an affection for the university and the college and the particular programs that they came from. I wonder, for you, what does it mean to stay connected to Ohio State? What does it mean to be part of that Buckeye Nation, if you will?
I'm happy to go first again. So for me, it's the network of relationships, friends, advisors, teachers that I've had through my experience at Ohio State. Really reflecting on how those experiences were some of the core reasons why I do the work that I do now, to try to continue that connection with my day-to-day work and priorities. But then the other aspect of it is I am now out of medical school. I've been through the medical training, and it's not an easy process, especially as a first-generation student or a first-generation physician. And for me, it's been really important to try and find opportunities to mentor students, to mentor folks that are interested in global health or in fields of medicine, to really talk about, okay, like, yeah, you need to take these tests, you need to do this application, but really you need to think about the reasons that you want to become a physician or you want to work in global health settings. And what are a lot of the translational skills or the skills that are applicable in day-to-day life situations, not just in a foreign country, but in your own community, how you can even make a difference, especially in a setting like the pandemic where travel is restricted and presential interactions are limited. There's still huge opportunity to make a difference. And so for me, that's been the two paths or the two ways that I think about being a Buckeye for life. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
I think I talked about how important the teachers were to me, and that's the truth. My first dance company was all friends from Ohio State back in the early 90s. And, none of us got paid. We just made stuff and then we performed. So that was like, I kept that going. Now it's harder. It's ebb and flow with, how much contact I have, but OSU, I went back in the early 2000s and I made a piece for the students. Always a special place in my heart for OSU. I still have friends from all different departments there. And yeah, it'll always be an important part of my history, and I'm proud.
So we're coming to the end of our time. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm so pleased that we've had a chance to recognize the amazing contributions that both of you are making in all that you're doing for the broader world. Thank you, and I'm thrilled that we've been able to honor you with these alumni awards today. And before we tune out, please go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say thank you so much for this award. It's really, it's incredible. I mean, to be honored, and like you said, there's so many, such a huge school and so many people doing amazing things. So thank you so much. It's really important to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. And before we tune out, I do also want to say that we're going to have a part 2 of Honoring Excellence on May 20th. I hope all of you can join us as we continue the presentation of our alumni awards to 3 awardees: Rosie Phillips Davis, Dean Gibson, and Keith Key. So thanks to all the folks who've tuned in to our webinar, and thanks, of course, to our 2 amazing awardees. I hope you all have a wonderful evening.